बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अस्सलाम वालेकुम नाज़रीन, आपका मेज़बान वक़ील ख़ान OpTv ग्लोबल के प्रोग्राम द कैपिटल हिल के साथ हाज़िर खिदमत है। नाज़रीन, इस प्रोग्राम में हम लेकर आएंगे अमेरिका में होने वाली वो एक्टिविटी जो कि डायरेक्टली अमेरिकन कम्युनिटी से वाबस्ता है और पैवस्ता है, जिसमें सेनेटर, कांग्रेसमैन, थिंक टैंक्स, मेयर्स, लोकल अमेरिकन पीपल और पाकिस्तानी अमेरिकन से इंटरेक्शन, बहावाला बायलैटरल एंड इकोनॉमिक कोऑपरेशन बिटवीन पाकिस्तान एंड अमेरिका। नाज़रीन, आज का टॉपिक है पाकिस्तान अमेरिका के ताल्लुकात और उसके दूररस नताइज। नाज़रीन, जैसे जानते हैं कि पाकिस्तान अमेरिका के ताल्लुकात आज के नहीं, ये 75 साल पुराने ताल्लुकात हैं। जब पाकिस्तान आज़ाद हुआ था तो वज़ीर आज़म लियाक़त अली ख़ान ने डिसाइड किया कि वो कहाँ जाएं, अपने पड़ोसी मुल्क रशिया जाएं या अमेरिका आएं। तो उन्होंने अमेरिका आना मकसूद किया और अमेरिका आए और यहाँ पे उन्होंने ताल्लुकात इस्तवार किए। इस तरीके से पाकिस्तान अमेरिका के ताल्लुकात का आगाज़ हो गया। देखिए, पाकिस्तान अमेरिका के ताल्लुकात बहुत ट्रेडिशनल हैं, पुराने हैं। बहुत अच्छे मौसम भी आए और ख़राब मौसम भी आए अमेरिका के साथ। पाबंदियाँ भी लगी, सैंक्शन भी हुई और हमें इस्तेमाल भी किया गया और हम अमेरिका के काम भी आए। यानी कि वो पाकिस्तान वही कंट्री था जिसने अमेरिका की ताल्लुकात चाइना से इस्तेमाल किए। पाकिस्तान वही मुल्क है जिसने तालिबान के सिलसिले में पाकिस्तान ने अमेरिका का साथ दिया और कोऑर्डिनेशन किया। कई लाख उनके जो महाजिन थे उनको अपने सीने पे बिठाया और आबाद किया। ये क्या वजूहत थी? डेफिनेटली ये वो वार थी जब अमेरिका ने लड़ी अफ़गानिस्तान में और पाकिस्तान को उसमें इन्वॉल्व किया। पाकिस्तान की इस वार में शामिल होने से कई हज़ार हमारे फ़ौजी भी मारे गए, हमारे पाकिस्तानी भी मारे गए और हमें बिलियंस ऑफ डॉलर का जो सरमायाकारी होती थी उसका नुकसान भी उठाना पड़ा। नाज़रीन, जैसे जानते हैं कि अमेरिका हमेशा उसकी कोशिश होती है कि वो किस तरीके से किस कंट्री को अपने साथ मिलाए और अपने काम लाए और फिर चलता बने। ये अमेरिका का तरीक़ाकार रहा है। लेकिन अमेरिका की दोस्ती बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट है हमारे लिए, ट्रेडिशनल है और कई जो है प्रेसिडेंट आए हैं अमेरिका की तारीख में जिन्होंने पाकिस्तान का बहुत कुछ साथ दिया है। पाकिस्तान की आबादकारी में भी उन्होंने हिस्सा लिया है, पाकिस्तान की तरक्की और कमरानी में भी उन्होंने हिस्सा लिया है। पाकिस्तान को टेक्नोलॉजिकल हेल्प भी की गई है, पाकिस्तान को अद्वियात और अनाज और फूड भी सप्लाई किया गया है। और ऑफ कोर्स बहुत सारे पाकिस्तानी अमेरिका में आबाद हैं। कई लाख पाकिस्तानी आबाद हैं जो अपने मुल्क को यहाँ से सरमाया भेजते हैं, आला तालीम हासिल कर रहे हैं। तो अमेरिका जो है वो दुनिया की चॉइस है, इज़ ए लैंड ऑफ अपॉर्चुनिटी फॉर ऑल ओवर द वर्ल्ड। एवरी कंट्री इंटरेस्टेड टू कम स्टे हियर, बिल्ड द रिलेशनशिप और अमेरिका से अच्छे ताल्लुकात कायम करें। ये डिपेंड करता है कि हमारी जो कम्युनिटी है, पाकिस्तानी अमेरिकन कम्युनिटी की जो बागडोर संभालने वाले हैं, जो लीडर हैं, सरकर्दा लीडर जिन्हें आपको लीडर कहते हैं, जो आए दिन सेनेटर, कांग्रेसमैन, गवर्नर, डिप्टी गवर्नर से मुलाकातें करते रहते हैं। ये उनका काम है कि वो अमेरिका और पाकिस्तान के ताल्लुकात को सवार कराएं और एक सही धारे में लेकर आएँ और जो भी पाकिस्तान के ख़िलाफ़ यहाँ पे साजिशें हो रही हैं या मुनाफरत फैलाई जा रही है, जो भी नेगेटिविटी है उसको दूर करें। लेकिन इस साल जितना मुसलमानों ने और पाकिस्तानियों ने सपोर्ट किया है गवर्नमेंट को, डेमोक्रेट को यानी जो बाइडन को, इतना पहले कभी नहीं किया किसी को। और हुआ क्या, नतीजा ज़ीरो निकला और जो बाइडन ने एक बार भी हुकूमत पाकिस्तान से रब्ता करने की कोशिश नहीं की किसी भी तरीके से। तो वो ज़रा तकलीफ दे रही और पाकिस्तान ने सोचा कि हमें सिर्फ इस्तेमाल करने के लिए ही कॉल किया जाता है, बाकी और हमारी कोई वैल्यू और वक़्त नहीं है। जैसा कि आजकल ट्रेंड चल रहा है कि एंटी अमेरिका ट्रेंड चल रहा है पाकिस्तान में, बच्चा बूढ़े सब लोग अमेरिका से थोड़े मुतनफ़िर हैं कि वो समझते हैं कि एक इलेक्टेड गवर्नमेंट جس کا صرف 1.5 سال باقی رہ گیا تھا اس کو وہاں سے اتار دیا گیا، اور وہ پی ٹی آئی اور وزیر اعظم سابقہ عمران خان سوچتے ہیں کہ شاید اس میں امریکہ کا ہاتھ ہے یا مداخلت ہے، سازش ہے کہ ان کو حکومت سے الگ کر دیا گیا، اور ان کی صرف یہ غلطی تھی یا یہ وجہ تھی کہ انہوں نے ایک ایسے وقت میں دورہ کیا رشیا کا جب یوکرین اور رشیا کی فائٹ چل رہی تھی۔ لیکن یہ تو وار اب چل رہی ہے نا، لیکن اس سے پہلے حکومت امریکہ کا یہ فرض بنتا تھا کہ وہ حکومت پاکستان سے رابطہ قائم کرے، کیونکہ طالبان نے جب خیر بات کا امریکہ کو افغانستان سے، تو پاکستان نے امریکہ کا بہت ساتھ دیا اور ہمیشہ دیتا رہا ہے، اور پاکستان نے ہمیشہ یہ کہا ہے کہ دیکھیں ہم امن کے ساتھ ہی ہیں، ہم جنگ کے ساتھ ہی نہیں ہیں، ہم پہلے کئی بار مصیبتیں اٹھا چکے ہیں اپنے اڈے دینے پہ، اپنی جگہ دینے پہ، ڈرونز کے اٹیک ہو رہے ہیں، پلین فلائی ہو کے افغانستان پہ حملہ کر رہے ہیں، یہ سب چیزیں جو ہیں ہمیں بڑی دکھی کر دیا اس نے، اور کافی بم بلاسٹ اور خودکش دھماکے پاکستان میں ہوتے رہے، پاکستان کی اکنامی شیٹر ہو گئی، تو یہ بہت کچھ ہوا ہے۔ تو اس سلسلے میں آپ کو ایک آج ویڈیو دکھاؤں گا، لیکن اس سے پہلے دیکھیں یہ بھی ضروری نہیں ہے کہ وزیر اعظم پاکستان سابقہ عمران خان اور ان کی حکومت تقریباً 100% امریکہ پہ ملبہ ڈال دیں۔ دیکھیں اس میں آپ امریکہ کو نہیں ٹھہرا سکتے مجرم، یا ان پہ الزام آپ نہیں لگا سکتے ہیں کہ جی امریکہ نے ہی سارا کام کیا ہے۔ اس میں پی ٹی آئی اور ان کی جماعت کی بھی کچھ غلطیاں ہیں، ان کے اتحادیوں کی بھی کچھ غلطیاں ہیں جنہوں نے ان کا ساتھ نہیں دیا، ان کو ایسے وقت میں چھوڑ دیا جب ان کی ضرورت تھی، تو اس میں حکومت پاکستان جو سابقہ تھی اس کا اپنا بھی ایک رول اور کردار رہا ہے اس حکومت سے جانے کا اور رخصت ہونے کا۔ تو آپ پورا ملبہ جو ہے نا امریکہ پہ نہ ڈالیں، اور ڈالا بھی نہیں چاہیے، کیونکہ یہاں پہ لاکھوں پاکستانی آباد ہیں جو پاکستان سے محبت رکھتے ہیں، اور یہ بات عمران خان کو یاد رکھنی چاہیے کہ جتنے بھی یہاں کے ڈاکٹر ہیں، فزیشین، انجینئر، بزنس مین، انٹرپرنور، انہوں نے ہمیشہ امریکہ میں رہتے ہوئے ان کے کینسر ہاسپٹل کی، ان کی یونیورسٹی کو سپورٹ کیا ہے، ان کی حکومت کو سپورٹ کیا ہے۔ تو یہ بات یاد رکھیں کہ امریکہ میں آباد پاکستانی ان کا ایک بازو ہے، تو اگر آپ امریکہ میں تقریباً پورا ملبہ ڈال دیں گے تو یہ اچھی بات نہیں ہے۔ یہاں پہ پاکستانیوں کو مشاکل ہوں گی اور مصیبتوں کا سامنا کرنا پڑے گا، کیونکہ ہمیشہ پاکستان ایک پیونگ کرتا ہے روڈ کی، اس کے بعد کوئی ایسا مسئلہ ہو جاتا ہے کہ امریکہ سے تعلقات خراب ہو جاتے ہیں۔ ناظرین، سال پہلے جب جو بائیڈن سینیٹر تھے تو ان سے میری ملاقات ہوئی تھی، اور میں نے ان سے ایک ویری شارٹ اسٹوری انٹرویو کیا تھا کہ کیا امریکہ ڈوئنگ انف فار پاکستان، تو انہوں نے اس کا جواب دیا تھا کہ یس ناٹ، امریکہ ناٹ ڈوئنگ انف فار پاکستان، اور دوسرے کانگریس مین نے بھی یہ بات کہہ چکے ہیں مجھ سے۔ تو جو بائیڈن نے تقریباً 35 to 40 منٹ کی یہ اسپیچ دی تھی کیپٹل ہل پہ اپنا ایک پروگرام میں، اور اس تمام اسپیچ کا لب لباب سے آپ کو اندازہ ہوگا کہ آج کل جو بھی پاکستان میں ہو رہا ہے یا جو کچھ ہوا ہے، جو امریکہ کا طریقہ کار رہا ہے، وہ اسپیچ اس کی عکاسی کرتی ہے، 100% عکاسی کرتی ہے۔ انہوں نے زرداریوں کا بھی ذکر کیا ہے، انہوں نے شریفوں کا بھی ذکر کیا ہے، اس نے بے نظیر اور مشرف کا بھی ذکر کیا ہے۔ یہ ایک واحد پریسیڈنٹ جو بائیڈن، جو پاکستان کی تمام تر سیاست کو جانتا ہے، اس نے یہ بھی کہا کہ ایک بار میں مرتے میں فاٹا پہ فلائی اوور کر رہا تھا ہیلی کاپٹر میں، اور ہمارا جہاز بادلوں میں پھنس گیا تھا، لیکن اللہ تعالیٰ نے مجھے زندگی دی، شاید مجھے امریکہ کا صدر بننا تھا۔ تو ناظرین آئیے بلا تاخیر کے میں آپ کو وہ ہسٹورک اسپیچ سنواتا ہوں جو بائیڈن نے واشنگٹن ڈی سی کیپٹل میں کی تھی، اور اس کو پریزنٹ کیا ہے انٹروڈیوس کرانے میں آپ کو اس سابقہ صدر اپنا ضلع منیر تھیں جو کہ میری لینڈ میں ہوتی تھی، اور یہ میری لینڈ کے ہی سینیٹر تھے۔ تو آئیے دیکھتے ہیں یہ رپورٹ۔ Doing enough for Pakistan, what Pakistan doing for America?
The answer is not yet, but yes. I believe most of my colleagues will follow what I've suggested to provide a democracy dividend of $1 billion to help get the economy going again and deal with infrastructure and education. I propose that we not base our policy on an individual, but on the Pakistani people, and make it clear that unconditionally we're prepared to provide $1.5 billion a year in economic aid to Pakistan. And thirdly, I think we should make it very clear that any military aid be what we call transparent, that we're able to have it accounted for, exactly how it's being used, what it's being used for. And I think that's what the United States should, the message to the people of Pakistan is, we are no longer going to support you merely based on a single thing we want. We're going to support you just like we support other nations that are allies who have difficulties. Nations like Turkey going through a court crisis right now. Nations like Great Britain and France who have had their own problems. And so the point here is that you have to assume, and if this doesn't work, nothing matters. You have to assume that the present coalition government over the next months and 2 years of the next election is going to result in another peaceful transition of another elected Pakistani government.
Simple. Assalamu alaikum. It is indeed my distinct honor and privilege to be introducing Senator Biden, though after Senator Harkin's remarks, I don't think there is much for me to say. I would like to welcome him on behalf of APNA and our collaborators, which is Backpack and the Voter Advocacy Center. All I can tell you is Senator Biden is from my small state of Delaware, but he's the man with the broadest of visions and comprehensive knowledge and view of the world.
Folks, look, first of all, I know you're here to make clear your views on a whole range of issues, domestic and foreign. And I know you're, quote, on one hand, grateful that we show up, on the other hand, I can see you going, oh God, not another one. Oh my God. All right, well, let me tell you, your physical constitution exceeds your good judgment. I mean, sitting in this room for this long, hearing many of us, I get tired of hearing people. So I'm going to make it very, very brief. I too am supposed to be chairing the committee at this moment. It started at 2, but I told them to hold us off, so we start. I hope my Republican colleagues, who are my friends and good friends, understand why we're going to start a little bit late. I have a very simple, straightforward message to you. I suspect a few of you who know me know that I don't mince words very much. Things are much, much too important. There's too much at stake. And I appreciate the applause, but it will save you time, and I really don't get very many applause, so I like it, but you need not react to what I have to say, because what I have to say is deadly earnest, and I just want you to understand my position. The only thing I've ever found, only time a public official ever gets in trouble, is when they turn out to be something different than they've advertised themselves to be. Different than they've advertised themselves to be. I want you to understand as clearly as I want to try to express as clearly as I can. You'll fully understand it if I express it clearly, what my views are. And I'm going to speak about only one relationship, the U.S.-Pakistani relationship at this moment. Ladies and gentlemen, if you excuse me quoting an Irishman, there's a famous poet many of you had to read in school in the States here, William Butler Yeats. And William Butler Yeats wrote about his Ireland and the first rising, as we Irish call it, the first revolution against England in the 20th century, a poem called Easter Sunday, 1916. And there's a line in that poem that I truly believe is more appropriate to describing the world today and the subcontinent of India today than it was describing his Ireland. He said the following. He said, the world has changed. It has changed utterly. A terrible beauty has been born. Not only the subcontinent of India, but the world, and the United States in particular, has changed significantly in the last 15 years. It is not the world of 15 years ago, but our policies have not changed. Our policies have not sufficiently, and it's not a criticism of Democrat or Republican, because part of that period there was a Democratic president. It takes time for international institutions, domestic institutions, to catch up with change. It's not easy. I am going to say something outrageously self-serving. I think I know the history of Pakistan as well as anyone you will find that serves in public life in the United States. I have made it my business because of my job as chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee and being on that committee for 35 years to try to understand that which I am dealing with. I've been to your country. Some of you know I've had, not your country, I've been to your country of your ancestors. And I have had very, very, very frank discussions with your leaders, including insisting and not threatening but making it clear to General Musharraf what I would do did he not cease and desist in certain things and so on. So I know your present government, the coalition government, well. I know each of the leaders personally, have known them for a long time. Benazir Bhutto used my office to operate out of when she was here in the United States. She literally got a call me the night before she was assassinated. I don't say this to tell you, I'm the smart guy. But I say this to lay down my bona fides here as to what I, in fact, am about to say. The single greatest change that has to take place now and there's no other country, not because you're better than anybody else, you're no better than the Indians or the Irish or the Chinese or the French. It's not that. So I'm not here to appeal to your chauvinism, your pride in being Pakistani. You should be proud, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here to state a simple fact as I see it. The single most important relationship for us to get right in the next 5 years is the U.S.-Pakistani relationship. Because, ladies and gentlemen, although most Americans do not realize, you always hear the statistics, the second largest Muslim country in the world and all those things. They're statistics. The reality is, the vast majority of the Pakistani people are Democrats with a small d. But a sizable minority have been radicalized. It's a reality. It's a reality. It's in single digits, but it's a reality. Pakistan is the only country in the world with nuclear weapons that in fact has a portion of their population and an area of their geography they're not in control of. That's a reality, not a criticism, a reality. The Fatah is real. And you know the history of your country's relationship, left over by the British and the outposts they left behind, and essentially saying, you're on your own. What I found, and I've been trying to make my colleagues aware and the President aware for the last 6 years, what is viewed as a terrorist in Islamabad is not necessarily viewed as a terrorist in America, and vice versa. We continue to impose our view on the Pakistanis as to what constitutes terrorism. We always ask them to understand our problem, and we never understand their problem. If I'm sitting in Islamabad, I'm a hell of a lot more worried about Masood than I am worried about bin Laden. He is a much more immediate threat to me and my government than bin Laden is. Yet what do we Americans do? We have, to use the doctor's phrase that I've been using for years now, we have to end, this goes back to the change. We have to change the transactional nature of the relationship. I don't have to tell anyone in this room. We are held in, and in a sense, understandably, low regard by the people of Pakistan. Because everything we've done the last 30 years, Democrat and Republican, has been, we will help you if you do the following things. That's what I mean by transactional. We will help your military if your military does this. We will help you economically if you do that. And then, once that transaction is finished, like the Soviets driven out of Afghanistan, we go, okay, nice being with you. and we walk away. It's true. It is true. Now here's the deal. It is in the overwhelming interest of our country, the United States of America, that relationship change. From a relationship based on a personality to a relationship based on a people. We do not treat other allies. We do not treat other allies. Let me give you an example. Turkey. The Turkey Supreme Court may very well invalidate the party that governs Turkey now, under the Turkey's constitution. We do not say to the Turks, if your court does that, or if you don't do that, we're going to cease and desist with the remaining relationship that we have with you, militarily and economically. Because it's a democracy. Like all democracies, a flawed democracy. Pakistan has a democracy. It's been a flawed democracy. It's had starts and finishes. I just spent an hour and a half with, let me make sure I get, with Mr. Hassan of the lawyers movement, who I, along with others, helped get out of jail. And there are a lot of requests being made of me as to what we should do to insist on the Chief Justice coming back and not coming back, and we should cut off aid and so on. Ladies and gentlemen, the days of that should be over. Here's my proposal, which is going to pass. It will become law, regardless whether anyone has figured it out yet. And it's this. I think we should state very clearly, and as an old American expression goes, put our money where our mouth is. We should change the relationship to say, my relationship as the United States of America is with the people of Pakistan, and to demonstrate, no, let me finish, please do not clap, is because I want you to understand the detail. Like I said at the beginning, the only time anyone gets in trouble is that they turn out to be something different than they advertise themselves to be, or different than you thought he was. I want to make no bones about where I am, and even if you oppose me, I will not change my view. Period. And here's what it says. It says that we have to demonstrate to the people of Pakistan this relationship is long-term and unconditional. That's why I propose, and it will pass, $1.5 billion a year in economic aid to the people of Pakistan for the next 10 years, period. Not conditioned on anything. As long as they have a democracy as imperfect or as perfect as it might be. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the problem has been, are we there to stay? Are we only there when we need the people of Pakistan? The second thing is military aid. Military aid to the Pakistani government and the military must be transparent and accountable. And if in fact, you do not tie one to the other, you do not cut the civilian aid if the military is in fact misbehaving. Because, ladies and gentlemen, my helicopter went down almost in the Fatah last time out there at 10,500 feet on top of a mountaintop in a snowstorm. Folks, visiting those remote regions of Afghanistan up against the Pakistani border, there's a simple proposition. The people in the Fatah have no relationship to Islamabad. There is no reason why Islamabad is relevant. And therefore, the less economic opportunity they have, the more inclined they are to resort to voices that are against the interests of Islamabad and Washington. So, ladies and gentlemen, even if the military is not doing their jobs, we should not stop building roads. Ladies and gentlemen, Saudi Arabia has funded 7,000 madrasas. 7,000 madrasas along the Afghan-Pakistani region. Your parents your grandparents. There are schools in Pakistan that are, quote, public schools that are empty, next to a madrasa, because there's no teacher, there's no support. And given the choice of putting your child in the better school physically or the dilapidated school, what do Pakistanis choose? The same thing Americans would choose. So, ladies and gentlemen, we need to not only insist with the aid that the Pakistani government use the aid to build more schools, but hire more teachers, train more teachers. You don't have enough teachers in elementary school in Pakistan. You cannot sustain a democracy. Jefferson once said, if you expect a nation to be both ignorant and free, you expect what never was and what never will be. Ladies and gentlemen, so I want to make it clear to you. The military, Kiani, may or may not do something rational or irrational. Don't come to me and say cut off economic aid because he has done something. And conversely, don't come to me and say to me, you must continue the military aid if it's not transparent or is being used in the wrong way. Because I will. I will.
Who will oversee the economic aid?
We, the United States government, has to oversee the economic aid. That's what I mean by transparency. It's not enough to suggest that the money be sent. The only conditions will be you use it on education, you use it on, and we want to see the results. Just tell us what the results are. Because it's a simple point. If we are taxing the American public $1.5 billion a year, and it's being wasted, we have an obligation not to waste it. There's a lot of detail in this legislation, but the bottom line, folks, is simple and complicated. Pakistan is going through a moment where your grandchildren are going to read about as a transformational, hopefully, but a transitional moment in Pakistan, modern Pakistani history. This government is either going to mature, as imperfect as it is, or it's going to fail. If it fails, the consequences for Pakistan and for America are not good. But I think we have to have some patience. I think Sharif is doing what every other politician does. And I think Benazir's husband doing what every politician does. All gaming this. Everybody knows there's an election coming up in 18 months to 2 years. And they're going to make a decision. You want to be on the inside or the outside? If it looks like the ship's going down economically, it's better to be on the outside and say, I was the guy that said. That's politics. That's the downside of democracy. But don't give up hope on this. It's pretty miraculous this transition took place as bloodlessly as it did thus far. Think about the other possibilities that could have happened. Not that people were not in prison, they were. Not that their children were not in prison with them, they were. Not that people did not lose their lives, they have. But we got a chance here. And shame on the United States if at this moment we fail to take advantage of the opportunity of promoting the possibility of an imperfect coalition succeeding in terms of continued economic growth and showing to the people of Pakistan they can deliver something. You're all educated people in this room. It's the amazing part of the Pakistani American population who's immigrated here. Ladies and gentlemen, name me a democracy that ever survived without economic growth. Name me one. So folks, the last thing I want to see happen, I don't want anybody saying in Pakistan, at least with Musharraf, we had economic growth. Democracy has produced stagnation. Because there was economic growth. A high, high price to pay for it. One you're willing to pay. But you're not living on a subsistence level. You're not part of a broad middle class still living in Pakistan wondering whether or not there's any reasonable possibility your children will have the same opportunity or a better opportunity. So folks, I've spoken too long, but I am hopeful. I am hopeful. I'm hopeful that my colleagues, and it's amazing, Senator Lugar, a Republican, has now joined me to sponsor Biden-Lugar, we're going to call it. The administration has privately told me they support this effort. Many of my House members who aren't familiar with the exact detail, like Sheila Jackson-Lee walking out saying, I think I want to co-sponsor it for you, we're with you. I believe we have an overwhelming prospect of, for the first time in 30 years, saying, Pakistan, we want a relations, and I apologize for looking at you. It's not because you're attractive. It's because you asked the question. Because you asked the question, you seem to be one of the ones paying the most attention. But seriously, what it is about, it's about starting off a new relationship. A new relationship. And ladies and gentlemen, the growth of democratic institutions, the reestablishment of a judiciary. You cannot build a democracy on the ruins of a judicial system. How the democratically elected Pakistani parliament concludes to reestablish that court is up to them, not to me to dictate. But they must do it. They must figure it out. So my point, and I'll end where I began. Some of you may recall that I was somewhat criticized by saying we have a Musharraf policy, not a Pakistani policy. That wasn't meant to go out of my way to denigrate Musharraf or not. It was about a policy that was the wrong way to base a policy. Just like under the first Bush administration, I said we had a Gorbachev policy, not a Russian policy. It's a mistake to make policy based on a single individual in democracy, good or bad, whether they're good or bad. The second point I want to make to you is that I'm the guy that got in trouble for saying that this administration has only one telephone number. It was to Musharraf. And by the way, they never used it. I used it. I'm the guy that picked up the phone when he declared martial law and got him on the telephone and made it very clear, at least as one simple senator, what I would do if in fact he did not keep his commitment. I'm not saying I did that. The startling point was, and I asked him, I said, have you spoken to anyone in the administration? He said, no, I've not spoken to anyone in the administration. So they remained silent. Our silence is deafening. Our policy has been damaging. So ladies and gentlemen, we've got to take a chance on this new, imperfect, transitional government, hoping it becomes transformative. We've got to do all that's reasonably possible for us to give them a chance to succeed. And that's why I also call for this democracy dividend of an immediate $1 billion in economic aid. But folks, I see the cynicism, understandably, on your face. It may not work. But the alternative is non-existent. There is no rational alternative, in my humble opinion. There is none. So I'll end where, quoting another Irishman, my grandmother Finnegan. Every time I'd leave her home, God love her, she'd yell out, Joey, keep the faith. And my grandpa would say, no, Joey, spread it. Spread the faith, we can get this done. Thank you so much.
नादीन, तो आपने ये रिपोर्ट देखी, इनकी स्पीच सुनी, तो इससे आपको अंदाज़ा हो गया होगा कि अमेरिका का क्या रूल होता है, वो किस तरीके से डिफरेंट कंट्रीज से डील करता है और किस तरीके से वो चुपके से अपना काम निकाल कर निकल जाता है। तो हमें ये सोचना होगा कि हमारी खारजा पॉलिसी क्या होगी, हमें किस पे डिपेंड करना होगा, हमें किसी पे डिपेंड नहीं करना है, हमें अपने ऊपर डिपेंड करना है। हमारे पास एक नहायती ताकतवर फ़ौज है, हमारे पास एक ट्रेन एजुकेटेड आर्मी है, हमारे पास खुले समंदर है, हमारे पास ऊंचे पहाड़ है, हमारे पास फाइटर मैन्युफैक्चरिंग इंडस्ट्रीज है, हम लोग टैंक बना रहे हैं, हम लोग न्यूक्लियर पावर है। तो हमें किस बात का डर है, हमें किस बात का खौफ है? कोई हम पूंजी पूंजी कंट्री है? नहीं, हम एक न्यूक्लियर पावर, एक बहुत बड़ी आर्मी रखने वाले मुल्क हैं। तो हमें अपने पे खुद एतमादी करना होगी, हमें अपने आप पे भरोसा करना होगा, हमें किसी से भीख नहीं मांगनी है हिफाजत की या अपने आप को संभालने की। अल्लाह ताला ने बहुत कुछ दिया है, ज़राअत भी है, एग्रीकल्चर भी है, अनाज भी है, समंदर भी है, फ्रूट, एवरीथिंग पाकिस्तान में सब कुछ है। सिर्फ एक ईमानदार, दयानतदार लीडरशिप चाहिए आपको, एक दयानतदार लीडर चाहिए, और उसी की ज़रूरत है कि आप अपने अदारों की रिस्पेक्ट करें, आप इस्टेब्लिशमेंट से ताल्लुकात अच्छे रखें, और ऑफ कोर्स वो अदारे जो पाकिस्तान की हिफाजत करते हैं उनको भी हम सलाम करें और उनका ख्याल करें, उन पर कीचड़ ना उछालें, उनके खिलाफ सोशल मीडिया पर प्रोपेगेंडा ना करें। ठीक है, ये ज़रूरी नहीं कि आप सारा का सारा मलबा फ़ौज पे डाल दें या अमेरिका में डाल दें, नहीं, आपको अपने बैकयार्ड में भी देखना होगा कि आपने क्या क्या गलतियाँ की हैं। तो नाज़रीन, इसके साथ ही आपका मेज़बान वक़ील खान आपसे इजाज़त चाहेगा प्रोग्राम दी कैपिटल हिल के साथ। मुझे उम्मीद है कि आइंदा प्रोग्राम भी देखेंगे। मैं आपकी ऐसे कांग्रेसमैन से मुलाकात कराऊंगा, ऐसे सेनेटर से मुलाकात कराऊंगा जो पाकिस्तान के बारे में बहुत कुछ कहना चाहते हैं। नाज़रीन, इसके साथ ही आपका मेज़बान वक़ील खान इजाज़त चाहेगा। अल्लाह हाफ़िज़। पाकिस्तान पाइंदाबाद।
OpTv की फखरिया पेशकश दुनिया भर में आबाद पाकिस्तानियों की तरक्की और कामरानी पर मबनी प्रोग्राम। पाकिस्तान को तरक्की की राह पर गामजन करने के लिए दुनिया भर में पाकिस्तानी मुतहर्रिक और तैयार। दुनिया भर के मुल्कों में पाकिस्तानी का उनकी तरक्की में हिस्सा देखिए। बैनुल अक़वामी मंजर में पाकिस्तानियों का समाजी, सियासी, तिजारती और मजहबी उमूर में भरपूर किरदार।